and welcome to another edition of Rail Rangers on the Road. The Midwest Rail Rangers, our 501c3 nonprofit organization, presents onboard educational programs across the upper Midwest. You may have caught us on the South Shore line between Chicago and South Bend, Indiana, aboard the Sky Parlor car at the Wisconsin Great Northern, on an Amtrak charter organized by the 20th Century Railroad Club of Chicago, on private rail excursions featuring heritage equipment, and at various outreach events such as Trainfest and Mad City Rail. In March of 2020, the coronavirus sidelined most of our programs.
A halt as train services, bus services, interstate bus services, railways, metros, they're all being stopped to break the march of the coronavirus.
After taking a few months off, we decided to come back and present virtual programs, taking you to exciting rail destinations across Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, and Wisconsin. So until we can be together again back on the trains, sit back and relax and enjoy another edition of Rail Rangers on the Road.
Well, hello everyone. This is Candace again, your educational officer. We're here at the Winona Depot in Minnesota. Just east of the depot here is Winona State University. And as we go here, we look at the depot. It was built in 1888 by the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad, later known as the Milwaukee Road. One of the oldest cities in southern Minnesota, Winona possesses a rich railroad history dating back to the 1850s. The dark red brick that you can see on the depot was designed by railroad architect John T.W. Jennings, defying easy architectural categorization, but does not exhibit characteristics of the Romantic Revival style popular in the late 19th century, such as the buff rock face stone used to highlight the water table, the trim around the windows and the doors. Jennings, who later became the chief architect and superintendent of the grounds of University of Wisconsin, divided the structure into two parts and an annex canopy that we'll see later as we get closer. In keeping with the social norm of the period, the building has waiting rooms, one for men and one for women and children, separated by a ticket office in the center. Each space also had its own entrance from the outside. Interior finishes included maple floors, durable Georgia pine woodwork, and bronze finishes. Today, one of the waiting rooms is still used by passengers and is furnished with heavy wood benches. The other waiting room serves as an office space for the Canadian Pacific Railway, which owns the property.
All right, thank you, Candace. This is Midwest Rail Ranger President Robert Taborn here, also with you on this beautiful Sunday. Trackside, projecting three-sided bay, allowed the station master an unobstructed view down the tracks, as you can see right where my finger's pointing right in here. That's what we're talking about. See how the agent can look out this way to the west and also to the north and to the south. At the roof line, it terminates in a gable, which we're kind of seeing right there, which is balanced by another larger one on the north facade. Their faces are covered in decorative shingles, which also carry over to the upper walls of the annex to provide additional texture on the building's surface. The distinctive multi-angled roof line, as you see there in our camera view, is achieved through a steep gabled roof with flared eaves and clipped gables. Curved brackets support the deep eaves that protect passengers when there's inclement weather, and of course we are here in Minnesota, so there's plenty of inclement weather, especially over the winter months. Over a century of use, certain decorative features, though, were removed. A lot of people don't know that, but there were some decorative features which cannot be seen. There used to be a prominent core belt chimneys. Those have been, as you can see, both no chimneys. They have been removed from the structure. And smaller dormers and even a cupola was crowned the annex. All those are gone. In the days of presidential whistle stop tours, the depot hosted Presidents Grover Cleveland, Teddy Roosevelt, and Harry S. Truman.
So, Robert's going to now take you inside the depot, and we're going to get a closer look at the inside of the waiting room.
All right, yeah, we're going to go ahead and take you inside. I did want to mention before we go inside, one of the reasons why we decided to come up here for our virtual education program this summer is I got to know the depot pretty well. Kind of a personal connection story I'd tell you before we go in and check out the depot. I was part of Trails and Rails, which was a program with Amtrak, the National Park Service, that put volunteers on trains. Between 2005 and 2010, we ran from Chicago up to Minneapolis and Winona here. So I frequently was part of our Trails and Rails team that got off the train here at the Winona Depot. And so pretty familiar. You can see behind me the crew. Amtrak crew is arriving. This is also not only would the Trails and Rails folks get off here from Chicago, this is also the first crew change point for the westbound Empire Builder and the last crew change point for the eastbound Empire Builder. So going west, the Chicago conductor's engineer get off here in Winona, and going east, the St. Cloud, Minnesota conductors will get off, and the Chicago crew will get back on. So there's the Chicago crew right there waiting for the train that should be here in a few minutes or so. Again, so they probably came up this morning, overnight in a hotel here in town. They're getting their papers and they're getting ready to get on their train shortly. So got to know it very well over the 5 years we did our Trails and Rails program here to Winona. So we'll take a peek here and kind of walk over. I was also mentioned when we were here, it was staffed by a station agent named Charity. She was really nice. She still works for Amtrak down in Texas, and it's since become an unstaffed station. Well, you can see where Candace was telling you about how there used to be two waiting rooms, the separate waiting rooms for men and women. The one over here being the Canadian Pacific office, and the one it's Canadian Pacific office there, and then this is the waiting room that's still used today. I'm not sure which ones was the men's and the women's. And then there's the ticket office there, which provided the views of west, north, and south. So we'll come over here and take a quick walk. There's not all that much to see inside the depot, but we'll go ahead and you get a pretty. You look up here, you do get a sense for the beautiful architecture of the station. As we mentioned, this is kind of a smaller waiting area because this is one of two waiting areas when the station was constructed. Again, as we mentioned a couple times, one waiting area was for men and one area was for women. So you can see some of the older benches. I don't think these are original here to the station, but there's not all that much in the lobby. Again, there used to be a ticket agent here, and no longer the case. They do have a machine that lets you buy tickets. You can see some of this. This is probably has to be pretty close to the original. Some of the heating elements here, and some of the benches. They do modern, updated restrooms here for passengers. And I do want to point this out here. This is a picture of Milwaukee Road 261, which is Friends of 261 up in Minneapolis. They're one of our partners. And there's a picture of their steam engine coming through Winona, as they often do run excursions, sometimes up and down the line. And let's go ahead and step out and we'll show you this side of the station. Like I said, that's about the only public area of the station. Now we are on what is the east side of the station, and Candace will tell you just a little bit more here.
Following the demolition of the Winona's old Chicago Northwestern Depot in 1980, wow, that was pretty close to what we're our time now. Citizens turned their attention to the maintenance of the Milwaukee road station. At the urgency of city officials, the CP, which purchased the assets of the Milwaukee Road, embarked on repairs to the roof and windows. Local volunteers raised additional funds to protect and donated their time and labor to help paint the building and landscape the grounds. Although the station has been served by its own tracks, the CP now uses them for storage, and the Empire Builder stops on the main line track just west of the shelter provided by the station. In part, due to the proximity to Rochester and the Mayo Clinic, Winona regularly ranks as the second busiest station in Minnesota, behind St. Paul.
And prior to the little history for you, prior to the arrival of European American settlers in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the land on the banks of the Mississippi River was visited by bands of Dakota Native Americans. Members of various bands of the eastern Dakota occupied various sites in southeastern Minnesota, including the large flat sandbar along the river. The river is located probably say about a mile or so away from the depot. You can walk it. It's not that far. From the 16th to 18th century, European explorers traveled through the area on missions to explore the Mississippi River and its various tributaries, as well as to establish networks for lucrative fur trade.
Through the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, the portion of Minnesota west of the Mississippi was transferred from France to the young United States. 2 years later, Army Captain Zebel Pike, which the highest mountain in Colorado is named after.
That's Pike's Peak, you know.
It is.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
14,000 feet, and it's got a cog railroad to the top.
But it's currently not running.
That's right, that's right.
He was sent to explore the upper reaches of the river. In his diaries, he recorded the beautiful landscape near Winona, including the island-dotted river and hills and prairies.
Now we'll show you a little bit here. They use this area, kind of some of the open areas for storage right now.
The annex.
The annex, yep. So this kind of shows you the back side here a little bit. Well, for those who decide to put down some roots here in the community of Winona, Winona developed into an important lumbering center, as we are pretty far to the north, boasting a handful of mills that process timber from forests of the great white pines in Minnesota and Wisconsin, which is just across the river. The smell of pulp and wood products wafted through the air here, and stacks of finished boards rose heavenward. Winona's wood mills provided vital building materials as people moved farther west into the treeless prairies and plains. Following peak production in 1892, the lumber industry quickly waned as the forest disappeared. We're looking, you can see some forested bluffs today. That line the river. So we're kind of on the low level here at the station, and then there's some of the forested bluffs. Some of these bluffs, they don't look very impressive from our live Facebook camera here, but they are 400 to 500 feet tall. The fertile lands west of the city, and we are looking west right now here on our Facebook Live, were perfect for wheat production, so that by the 1860s, Winona became a major milling center. In 1870, the town ranked as the fourth largest wheat shipping port in the nation, believe it or not, of everywhere, and mills responded by utilizing the newest technology to produce premium flour. Bay State Milling, still a prominent feature on the skyline, was founded in 1899 and continues to process and blend grains. Unfortunately, Winona's grip on the market slipped as the wheat region moved north and to the west, especially including the Twin Cities.
An essential element to the success of Winona's merchants was their access to excellent transportation networks. The Mississippi and its tributaries offered a route into the continent's interior, where water-bound vessels could not venture. New railroads filled in the gaps. In 1862, local investors organized the Winona and St. Peter Railroad. 2 years later, it reached 50 miles west to Rochester. Absorbed into the Chicago Northwestern Railroad in 1867, it made it to St. Peter, Minnesota in 1870. From there, it continued into the vast Dakota Territory.
Yeah, the tracks served by the current depot were envisioned as part of the Mississippi and Pacific Railroad, soon renamed the Chicago-St. Paul Railway, to run between St. Paul and Winona. Grading began in 1865 with trains running on a regular schedule between the two cities in 1871. The same year, the railroad was purchased by the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul, also known as the Milwaukee Road, as part of a network extending from Chicago to La Crosse. To link its rail lines on both sides of the river, the Milwaukee Road used the tracks of the La Crosse, Trempealeau, and Prescott Railroad on the eastern shore of the Mississippi. That's also where the Burlington Zephyrs would run and stop at East Winona, Minnesota, and they would provide a shuttle bus that would go here to Winona. At Winona, the tracks crossed a bridge first built in 1871. To eliminate the need to use another company's tracks and thereby strengthen its market share, the Milwaukee Road built its own bridge in 1876 between La Crosse and La Crescent, which is about 20 miles to the south of us in the direction there that we moved the camera. Tracks were then laid between La Crescent and Winona. Subsequent lines linked Winona with Kansas City, Omaha, and other growing markets.
By 1900, Winona could claim more millionaires per capita. Wow, that's pretty impressive.
That is for the small town.
Than
Yeah.
any other place in the United States. But the decline of lumbering and milling negatively affected the economy. In the 20th century, the town transitioned into an education hub. The Winona State Normal School was founded in 1856 to train teachers. Over the decades, its course offerings increased until it made full university status in 1975.
Yeah, Winona's wheat and lumber wealth also gave birth to flowering of the arts. And I want to show you just a couple things over here. This is kind of the freight side of the CP. So they do keep some stuff over here, but I kind of wonder the history of kind of some of this. You kind of sometimes have to watch your step here on the platform. It's not as well maintained as the personal side, but if you look up, you can kind of see some of the paint and the woodwork here. I kind of wonder if that is not some of the original stuff, paintings and designs. Maybe that's close to that. I'm going to show you this over here. And it's also it's Canadian Pacific, which of course took over from the Milwaukee Road. Maintains some presence here. They do have some work trucks and things like that over here still. You can see the Canadian Pacific work trucks. And I want to show you one more thing. And a lot of people don't realize this, but we got to know the conductors pretty well back when we did our Trails and Rails program here 10-15 years ago, and they said make sure you always check out the freight house. And it was kind of funny because the first 5 or 6 or 7 trips we did up here, I never really noticed it, and a lot of passengers don't notice it. We do want to mention Winona, besides the crew change point, it's also a smoke stop for the Empire Builder, both east and west. So sometimes you do have a chance to get off and smoke here, but it's usually pretty brief. But I want to take you over just and end things right here at the freight house. And you gotta watch your step down here for my camera person here. This is the old Milwaukee Road Freight House, and the first thing the conductors pointed out to me was the triangle. It's really, just in the last 10-15 years, it's really weathered. You can see it used to say Freight House, and it's really starting to fade. All you see is the last part of freight and then house. You can barely make out the old Milwaukee Road logo, but you can see the rectangle on the kind of the 45-degree angle. Really, you can't make out the logo, but you can make out that there was the Milwaukee Road logo up there, pointing to it right there. So you can kind of see that. But there is a surprise, and that's what I'm going to end with as we walk over here. And this was kind of the coolest thing. A lot of people don't realize this. This is on the street side away from the depot. So you really can't see this because you can't go over here during the smoke stops on the Empire Builder because there's just not time. But you can if you're ever catching the train here. You can definitely do that. This is the old freight house. But back when we were doing our Trails and Rails programs, there was actually talk about tearing this down because the university needed more housing. I really don't know what the status of that is. I know it's in rough shape inside. Floors collapsed out and whatnot, but this is really, really, really cool in the day, I think in the days of very few Milwaukee Road logos still around. Some of the conductors showed this to me. We still have a pretty good Milwaukee Road logo up here, and that is original, not repainted, retouched. And the sun does not fade it as much because this is facing east, and then there's housing, university housing and stuff over here. So the Milwaukee Road logo is still up here. So check it out if you're ever in Winona. It's pretty cool to see that. Pardon me. So, we hope you enjoyed the tour of Winona. As we mentioned, the Midwest Rail Rangers normally catch us out on the South Shore, and you see our programs of the Wisconsin Great Northern and 20th Century Railroad Club and Amtrak charters and private rail charters and outreach events, and it's been one heck of an unusual summer. But we decided to do these virtual education programs every 2 weeks or so to show you some unusual and cool places around the Midwest. We hope you're enjoying some of these. This is our fourth one now that we've done, and we want to invite you to put our next virtual education program on your calendar. It is just about 2 weeks from today. So from Winona, Minnesota for now, we hope you enjoyed your tour of the depot, Milwaukee Road, the freight house here. We hope you learned a thing or two about the Milwaukee Road Empire Builder, the town of Winona, a little rail history here in very beautiful southeast Minnesota along the Mississippi River. So we'll see you again 2 weeks, about 120 miles that way, back at our headquarters in Barron, Wisconsin. See you then. Thanks so much for joining us for another edition of Rail Rangers on the Road. To learn more about the Midwest Rail Rangers, our 501c3 nonprofit organization, simply log on to www.railrangers.org. That's www.railrangers.org. And if you're interested in planning your own trip, you can also purchase one of our Railroad Route Guide books, ebooks, or MP3 podcasts at the Midwest Rail Rangers store, conveniently located at www.midwestrails.com. That's www.midwestrails.com. Until our next program, have a great day.